We are living in strange times. Perhaps more than ever before in our lifetimes, it is critically important that we stay connected to the divine, our souls, and to keep our energetic vibrations high. That can be incredibly hard to do in the face of the 24-hour news cycle, social media, and personal and relational division. But it is possible to raise your frequency in order to support and manifest good in your life and in the world. The Higher Vibrations meditation class with Cynthia Alice Anderson will meet online in June on Wednesday evenings. Higher Vibrations will focus on the transformation of low vibes, opening to peace, finding higher vibrations, and will give practical application for your life. You can drop in for a single Higher Vibrations class for just $15 or enroll in the entire class for the discounted rate of $45. Seating is limited and the Higher Vibration class starts soon, so enroll today at cynthiaaliceanderson.com/higher vibrations. Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 105, our conversation with Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello, and welcome to The Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I am the host, and I am here in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey. You know, I know we've been at this a couple of weeks, but can I just say, it's great to have you back in the studio.
Hey, man, great to be back. Yes,
like I
for
said,
sure.
I know we've been at it a little bit, but
Yes.
it feels new every time.
Yes, it does. Well, and we are really, really blessed today to have a special guest. My friend, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee is here. Donna, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I've known Donna for, I don't know, I was trying to add up the years, Donna. I don't know if I want to really say how long it's been, but probably close to 30 years, definitely 25.
Yeah.
And we met, and I don't know if you know how I first learned about you, so I'll share that in a minute, but we are super glad to have our listeners with us. Also glad for all of you joining us on YouTube, and super happy too about all the people joining me for online classes, receiving inspiration and support. And it is my joy and my honor to be supporting you on the journey, especially at such a time. And today, our guest, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, not only was she in private practice for over 40 years, she's also the author of a book. That book is called Iron Legacy, and we will put a link to that in the show notes to make sure that as our listeners, you have a wonderful, wonderful resource to support you on the journey. So yeah, Donna, we're glad you're here. And tell us where you're joining us from.
I'm joining you today from Bend, Oregon.
Wow, beautiful.
In my office.
Good. Yeah, your office where you tried to retire and...
I tried, and it didn't work out so well.
Right. Well, there is a lot of need right now, and it's one of the reasons I'm thrilled to have you on. I learned about your work many years ago when I was in a recovery meeting. I was sitting in an Al-Anon group, and I was pretty new to recovery at that time. And a young man walked in, very handsome, very buffed out and masculine, carrying a small teddy bear. And I said, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm going to talk to him. And the more we talked, I asked him about the bear. And I said, so what's your bear's name? Started talking. Anyway, long story short, he says, well, the bear's great for picking up chicks. But really, the reason I use it, I know, charming, the reason,
Yeah.
But really what I'm doing is inner child work. And I said, well, who are you working with? He said, well, she's amazing. Her name's Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee. And another friend said, if you don't like her, I will pay you to go. So, as you know, you've made a huge impact in my life. And it's awesome to have you back, to have you on the show because of the tremendous impact you've made And because so many of the things that I teach now are a result of some of the work we started that long ago. So I honor you for that. And I honor you for the work you've done in recovery and also even work you've done around infectious disease. So I'm thrilled to have you here today and would love to have you talk to us a little bit about where you are in all this, because you were trying to retire. And I think you'd been in private practice for wasn't it 45 years?
Private practice 45,
Yes.
professionally 50,
Yes. Yes.
doing other things, yes.
Yes. Well, tell our listeners a little bit about your journey, because so many of our listeners are around the world, and they have a really a journey not unlike either one of us. Many of our listeners are in recovery. Many of them have been in and out of spirituality and are trying to find a way to handle life on life's terms. And right now, that's really, really difficult. So tell us a little bit about your journey, if you will.
Well, right now, I think the most important part of my journey is the part where I was asked to be a consultant for the World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
That was not on my agenda. It wasn't one of my professional thoughts at the time when I was going through school and new in private practice. But it was after the AIDS crisis we'd finally managed it a little bit here in this country, and they were looking for somebody who could help them identify and deal with some of the issues that they were having around dealing with the AIDS crisis in Africa, India, and Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And so they asked me to come and join with a group of people to consult with them on the difficulties they were having with dealing with that virus. And because I'd been in early on into the AIDS crisis,
Mm-hmm.
as a healthcare provider back in the early 80s and
Yes.
late 70s, there were a group of us in the country, doctors and therapists and physical therapists and such, who were also working with trying to deal with this disease, this virus that nobody had any idea about.
Mm-hmm.
Just like now.
Yes. Yes.
And so I
mm-hmm.
feel like we're right back at it. And, one of the most important aspects of all of this, and I actually discussed this in Geneva, was that when you're dealing with an illness like this or any kind of situation over which we have no control and that we don't understand, the most important aspect of our dealing with this, of our recovery from this, is whether or not a person can be in their what I call adult ego state.
Yes.
That means, in essence, that you are behaving in a way where you are taking in all of the facts.
Yes.
From people who understand and who know, usually more than you. You take in those facts and you behave based on decisions that you make in this part of your body.
Right.
This brain.
With your mind.
Not your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Not based on your own personal desires, but based on this.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain, your God-given, computer, right? Mm-hmm. And we discuss that in Geneva because the problems they were having in Africa, and I think a lot of people know this, is that there were all kinds of superstitions about where the AIDS virus came from.
Yes.
And so people were basing their behaviors on these superstitions, on these ideas that had no basis in reality. And, from being from an industrialized country like ours, it was very hard for me to believe that, people would actually think these things. But if you don't have access to facts,
yes,
you only operate from fear.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, my perception of what's going on right now, even though we have facts in this country, we are also operating largely from fear. And we're not in our adult, as you say. And,
Yep.
we are running around as little scared kids, making up stories because reality is too hard to deal with. And we don't have the tools for, looking at reality for what's really happening, like you say, seeing what the facts are and making good decisions. People are making up stories that it's a hoax. People are, in fact, superstitious. I know what you're
Yes,
meaning in Africa, but here it's virtually the same in terms
it
of
is.
the myriad of stories I've seen that are being made up around its origin, even though we
Yes,
already have medically documented proof, as to where it came from.
yes,
And
that is true.
yeah, and so I want you to talk a little bit about it for our listeners about getting your adult on board. This is
Okay.
a language. Well, this is a language I'm used to, and
Yeah.
I know it will help people from your perspective because this is your, part of your core teaching about getting your adult on
And
board.
yes, and I talk about that in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the basic overall reality of that book. And that is
Yes.
that when people grow up in families that are less than nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking about people who, as children, grew up in families where they're primary caregivers. And I'm not just talking about parents, I'm talking about grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, everybody that you come into contact with as a child or is a primary caregiver to
Mm-hmm.
you. And if they have been less than nurturing, if they've been abusive, if they've abandoned you, if they've neglected you, if they haven't been there for you, then that impacts your emotional growth.
Mm-hmm.
And based on when those experiences occurred, you do not achieve your full emotional growth. Essentially, and this is really simple, but I'm all about simple, is that if you grew up in a family where you were afraid,
Mm-hmm.
then you are not able to get in your adult reality. You're not
Yeah.
able to get into your adult ego state.
Right.
And, when people talk about, oh, I'm getting triggered, and I feel like a little child now, or I feel 5 years old, or I feel like a 13-year-old. I know what that is. I've done this. That's why, in my book, I'm very clear about what this was like.
Right.
And when you feel afraid, abandoned, worthless, helpless, and hopeless, you are essentially in an emotional ego state we call the wounded child ego state.
Yes.
You are in this ego state where you feel absolutely impossible. You might die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just crawl into a hole. And then there's the ego state, your adapted adult child ego state. And what I see is that most of the leaders of our country are in this ego state.
Yes.
Which is about between 10 years old and maybe 17, where they've got their dukes up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
Just I'll fight you and I'll bully you, or I'm going to, drink or use drugs. I'm going to act out in some way.
Yeah.
There's a reason that in our culture, anyway, we don't identify 13-year-olds as adults. We don't let them drive. We don't let them drink. We don't let them get married, on and on, right?
Right.
We don't want them to have sex. We don't want them to do these things. Why? Because their brain has not completely formed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Their frontal lobe, their executive function isn't there. And when I see the leaders of our country acting like 13-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
don't tell me things I don't understand. I'll just make up a story about it and blame someone else and bully them.
Right.
That's what happens when you are in a middle school, and you know this because you were in middle school, when there's bullies on the playground, they're bigger, they're stronger, they have more, they have more to bully you with than you have. Like maybe you're smaller, or maybe you don't have the same kind of resources that they do. So they bully you, they hurt you, they take your lunch money. And that's how they feel powerful.
Yes.
So when somebody feels like they've got their dukes up and they're going to fight you,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no gun pointing at you, you're not in your adult ego state.
No.
You're in your adapted adult ego state,
Mm-hmm.
and you're acting like a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
That is so dangerous when you're dealing with a pandemic.
Yes.
Think about it. Do you really want a 13-year-old making decisions about a pandemic, a virus? No.
No.
And so, how do you get your adult reality, your adult ego state back on board? And again, this is really simple. You know you're not there when you're not making decisions based on facts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what you do is you get your adult ego state on board. And it's really simple. You say, I'll do it right now. I'll show you. I am Donna Bevan-Lee. I am 69, going to be 70 years old. I am a mother, soon to be a grandmother. I am married. I live in a house. I have a private practice again. I wrote a book. I have brothers and sisters. And as I say those things out loud,
Mm-hmm.
I feel myself calm down. I feel more present.
Mm-hmm.
I feel more available. And that's when I'm going to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't want to be 69 making decisions like a 13-year-old. Not good for me or anyone else.
No. No, and because the environment of our leaders is really the behavior of an abusive household, those who, especially who haven't begun their work, are so in trigger mode, they have no idea what reality is right now. And I think
they don't.
No. And they're acting out, they're, showing up on court steps with machine guns, and such as that. And that's the concerning thing. And as a faith leader, my other concern is some of the faith leaders who are in such denial that they're endangering their people as well. And it's the same reason.
Yes.
It's the same behavior. And of course, then there's also the motivator of money. Somebody said to me, well, why are these other, faith leaders opening their doors? I said, I can answer that in one word. And they said, what is it? I said, well, it's money. Because, this is, so many faith communities are about simply churning out fear. And the way to do that is to have people in the building, and to have people in the building, when we have people in the building, we make money. It's that simple. And so it's all about their need, the individual need, rather than the need of the collective.
Right.
Yes. I mean, our church closed very soon. And, I talked, I don't think I told you this when we were speaking the other day, but when all of this started hitting, I was traveling a lot, and I started calling, I have a friend who's, has been in healthcare for 30 plus years. And I called another friend who's a scientist and said, I need, give me the most scientific definition you can of what's happening. So as a leader, I can make a good decision. Well, when I received all that information, I'm, going through the details, thinking of the impact, how am I going to communicate it and things like that. So when I got all this information, I, immediately constructed an email to my colleagues, thinking certainly they would be happy to receive it. That certainly there would be an idea that we would want to, as leaders, not only be connected in this, but care for our people in the best way we could. And out of all the people I emailed, only one decided to close the Sunday I did. And he had done the same thing. He had gone to the people in the community who he trusted, who were leaders in healthcare, and made the exact same decision with the exact same information I had, from an adult perspective, realizing that as leaders, we have a tremendous responsibility in protecting those most vulnerable. But we'll only do that if we're in our adult state.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, based on one of the things that I've heard from people who, I work with, because I work with everybody who is actually healthcare providers working in this pandemic, to people who have all the resources in the world and think that, well, okay, there are some people who are expendable. We just got to get this economy back, right? I mean, across the board. But one of the people that I work with who is who's a very devout in their religion, said to me, well, God will take care of this.
Yes.
I have faith in God. And I said, well, I remember when I was a child, I do remember very much of when I was a child. I remember because we grew up in a very religious family, a really devout religious family.
Mhm.
And I asked my mother when I was very ill as a child, and I asked her, I said, if we have faith, will God fix us? Will God, heal me? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then why do we have to go to the doctor and I have to get shots and I have to do all this stuff? Because if we don't go there, then and we have faith, then God will heal me. So
Mhm.
why do we have to go do all this stuff I don't want to do because it hurts? And she said, God also gave us the gift of a brain and intelligence.
Great answer.
I know this is my little Mormon, rancher mother, farmer, who's very, very smart. She died
She's passed
recently,
on.
but I was really, I remember that obviously
Mhm.
because I said, well, so what? And she said, God gave us the ability to solve problems, to look at issues,
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
to be doctors, to be lawyers. God gave us that ability. What we do with it is up to us. And we can still have faith because God will give us support,
Yes.
love,
Mhm.
and help. But he's not, God is not, God, whatever God is not going to come down here and say, here, let me give you a shot and fix that for you.
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
No, it's not gonna happen. We have to use all the tools. We have the gift of free will to make choice. And I think if praying were enough, it would have worked by now. And
Oh, yeah.
and so as a minister, obviously, I believe in the power of prayer and the power of faith to change us. But yes, we have minds and we can think and we can work with the situations we are receiving from the mind and soul level, to make good decisions to move ourselves forward. So we are going to take a quick break. We will be right back after this with Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
We'll return to the program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407-628-0705. We'd also like to extend our special thanks to Zen Living Realty. Zen Living Realty's mission is to mindfully serve, connect, and positively impact their customers, partners, and community through their Zen approach to real estate. Their vision is to be the most trusted real estate brokerage in the Central Florida area. You can reach Zen Living Realty at zenlivingrealty.com or call 407-800-2717. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
So welcome back. We're glad you're with us, and we're really glad to have Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee here. And I want to mention right now that in the show notes, we will have a link to her website, which is where you can get the book and find out more about her work. As I mentioned in the very beginning, that I started many years ago working with her and have connected with her many times over the years. And I just honor that connection and thank you for that, Donna, because your way of working is quite memorable because of the depth that you take your clients. And one of the things is really that's stayed with me always is getting into reality. Like if I feel like I'm swirling down on something, I was like, wait, I got to get in reality here. What's happening? And that way you spoke of earlier, just talking to yourself, getting your adult on board. And if I there was a few years ago, I was going through a really tough time, and I went back to just talking to my inner child to get her really feeling safe so that I could get my adult on board. It was like my inner child was like, you need me to run things. And so the teachings continue to inform my life. And I really am highly recommending the book. It is a wonderful read. It's an intense read, but it is very, very important for maturity on the journey, I believe. The particular way in which you work, in which you teach. And, you used to do these weekend long workshops as well. And that was a life changer. You literally taught me a new way to think. I'd heard of codependence, but I couldn't have told you what it was. And after that, boy, looking at those family patterns, and Donna, you mentioned that at the very beginning when you were talking about the patterns in your family, and then we were talking about the patterns in our leaders. And I don't know if you've told me this, but I just have thought back so many times about my experience of legacy. Your weekend long, your a 4-day, I guess. Yeah. It is a family legacy that we inherit, whether we like it or not. And then it's up to us to heal. So, what I know for my son is that he's growing up with different rules than I did. He's growing up with a different kind of emotional safety than I did. He's growing up knowing that he's loved and supported for his feeling reality, and he's encouraged, to really move into reality about what's happening. And I can't tell you what a gift it is to watch him move through those stages with so much more ease than I did. And a large result of that is, what I learned from you. So I really honor you for that. And I want you to go back to, at the very beginning, you were talking a little bit about your work with the WHO. And if you feel comfortable sharing, because I know you were contacted, right, about potentially helping in a bigger way during the pandemic when it first started. And so I wanted you to share that with our listeners.
People were, well, the issue was that we knew how the virus was spread, and it was through blood to blood, or blood to blood, semen to semen, or semen to, what do you call it? Bodily fluid.
Right.
Okay, where we knew that it was bodily fluid contact. We knew this. Just like now we know that it's within 6 feet, the droplets that come out. We know that. Now we know how it is spread. So until there is some kind of treatment or cure or virus or vaccine, we have to, what adults do is they say, oh, this is how the virus is spread. I guess I won't do that anymore. Well, we know that people, if they're in their adult self, if they're acting their age, is what we call it, they make good decisions about that. Okay? I was sitting in a parking lot here at Ace Hardware and Safeway yesterday while my spouse put on her mask and went in and got a couple of items that we needed, right? And while she was in there, I don't go in. I mean, I'm old. I have an immune disorder. I'm on suppression drugs. I don't go into stores.
Right.
But I still was sitting there watching. And 9 out of 10 people walked into the store without a face mask. And I thought, okay, so there's one adult to every 9 children. And the way I saw that was that there were some people who were going into the store with, eating. Okay, so now droplets will land on their food. They'll eat it too.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're eating. They're walking around with each other, talking to each other, meeting each other. And I just sat there going, okay, we haven't quite, we've made it clear. It's just about what to do. It reminds me of when people get behind the wheel of a car when they're drunk.
Yes.
If you ask them when they're in their adult self and say, would you get behind the wheel of a car if you've been drinking too much? Most people would say absolutely not. And yet they do.
And yet,
right?
Yes.
Because when they are drinking, of course, they're in an altered state. But when people are in their adult self, would you say, Would you go in and infect somebody on purpose? And I know that there are anti-vaxxers who do,
Mhm.
okay? But if we say two people who have the facts, would you go in and infect them? Would you cough on them? They would say, oh, no,
No, of course not.
okay?
Right?
Because when you're asking those kind of questions, you're usually appealing to their adult reality.
Mhm.
Codependence is basically another term for emotional immaturity.
Yes.
It's important to feel like your age and to act your age when you're in these states. And that's why we were talking in Geneva. One of the problems they were having this was the big issue. So in Africa, where the AIDS crisis is still out of control,
Yes.
one of the problems they're having is that they go to these villages, the WHO, and they go to women and say who are pregnant and say, okay, you're pregnant, we can give you drugs that will help your child not have AIDS.
Mhm.
Would that be okay with you? And the response they get is this: if I take that drug, a couple of things will probably happen. One is that my husband will know that I have AIDS. They think, the men there think that this means that she's been out having sex with other men.
Right.
Okay. So what he'll do is he'll either kill her or she'll be banished from the community.
Right.
So she said, so you want to give me a drug that is going to announce to the community that I have AIDS? My child will be born, I will die,
Mhm.
and my child will be born outside of a community,
Yeah.
right? They'll be an orphan, but they'll be well. They won't have AIDS. And so most of those women say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we had to do is we had to find a way to reach men who said, we know how this is going. Well, we know how the virus was spread in Africa.
Sure.
The truck routes.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
Plain and simple. Because men there were having sex with prostitutes all through the truck routes and go home and have sex with their wives.
Right.
And so the women were thinking more in terms of how it's going to affect me, how it's going to affect my children. That would be an adult reality. They were taking into account facts.
Right.
But the men were not. They were still in this fantasy about what was going on while they were in their trucks.
Right.
That their wives were home having sex with other people. And so we had to break through to where the problem was.
Mhm.
Okay.
With the men, you mean? Mhm.
Yeah. And the same thing was, there were different issues. Like in India, it was a different problem. In Southeast Asia, it was a different problem. So it was the same virus, but you're dealing with people's ways of living,
Right.
their belief systems, their everything. When you're dealing with this kind of an issue,
Mhm.
and if a bomb's falling out of the sky, everybody knows what to do: duck and cover. That's what I learned when I was 6. Duck and cover. But if this is a virus, you have to reach into people's belief systems
Mhm.
to help them understand that this isn't a fairy tale. It's not magic. It's not a hoax. It's not on purpose.
Mhm.
So we just have to reach in and change our behaviors.
Mhm.
And when we make decisions about it, we have to get into that adult self. I have
Yes.
to act my age. I have to think my age. And I have to make decisions based on how old I really am. So I'm not going to ask my son now, what he said. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. But my son read my book. He's 32 and he's going to have a child soon. Well, his wife is going to have a child soon. But he said to me, when he read my book, he said, I'm so glad to have read this because now I know how to raise my kid.
Yes. Yes.
And I was raised by you, so lucky James, but but that's what he said.
Yep.
Because this is all about how we raise our children and how and if they're able to be in their adult self.
Yes, it's so true. And I often say that the one that benefits the most from my work is my son,
Absolutely.
because he starts where I am, and thank goodness I'm still working every day on myself. And when I'm catching myself in an old behavior, I had to. This is, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, but there was an interaction, and I realized I was, through my projection of what was going on, contributing to him being anxious. And I was being overprotective. And I just, said to him, you know what? I said, I need to get clear with you because I'm seeing that. I said, sweetie, when I was growing up, my experience was so different and I wasn't protected. So I'm seeing now that I'm overprotecting you and you don't need it to the level that I'm doing. So I just want to just get clear with you. I asked for your forgiveness and I got it. And so he sat there a minute. He's like playing with Legos, and he goes, well, do you think you want to work on healing that?
Yeah. Out of the mouths of babes.
I know.
Right?
I said, yes, you're absolutely right. And me saying that is a part of my healing to get clear with you because you know what the boundaries are. You know, because I've taught them to you and you're growing up. So, so I'm going to give you a little more space and I'm always here. He said, Mama, you are always there. Well, I could never have said that. I could never have said that about my situation. So as we learn, as we grow, like you say, as we get more and more into our adult, there is this expansive feeling. There's more room for everyone. It's like, oh, I can see what's happening out here. I don't have to react because I can see they're really in their child at the moment and nothing I say is going to get in anyway. They're in total trigger mode. So
Yes.
My son, who's turning 13 tomorrow, or sorry, when this airs, he just already turned 13. But, when he's turning 13, boy, he's got so much emotional awareness, so much emotional intelligence on board, more than most adults because of the environment he grew up in. So, yeah,
that's right.
The main, and I've said to many, many people, please, please, please work on yourself so that those that come behind you can benefit.
Right.
We don't think of it, but we ourselves now are the ancestors to those coming behind. And we want to be, yes, we want to leave a legacy of happy, healthy ancestors where we know our emotions, where we lead life with our adult on board and our inner kid has its proper place.
Right.
Yeah.
When you talk about the trigger, as soon as you feel a trigger, and usually it happens like in your chest, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you all of a sudden are breathing faster and you're afraid. Mm-hmm. And that's always the first thing that happens. As soon as you're triggered, that your adult has now stepped out of the room. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And before you open your mouth, and this would be helpful, like if adults acted like this, before they open their mouth, they say, okay, I got to be my age. Yes. Because the fact remains, if we're all, imagine this. Imagine if our Congress, if our presidency, if our administration all acted like adults right now.
Wow.
Just imagine. Okay? We have a pandemic that is not under control yet. Still, that would be the first thing they'd notice. Okay?
Yeah.
And then they'd sit and say, okay, what can we do to help people stay safe, get well, and not go into depression?
Right.
Because I'll tell you what's going to happen next. I already knew this. Back in, December, I knew about this virus. And I said, there's going to be serious mental health consequences.
Yes.
And the suicide rates of the Great Depression are going to look minuscule because people will be triggered into their hopelessness. Mm-hmm. They feel helpless. Mm-hmm. And that's when it's the most dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And then if they feel like they're 13 and they want to come up fighting, now they're just contributing to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if most people, if everybody was able to get to act their age, okay? If you're 30, you don't want to be acting like a 12-year-old or a 5-year-old. It'd be like turning to what you called your inner child. Yeah. It's like turning to my little girl, Donna Jean was her name, and say, so Donna Jean, there's a pandemic out there. And, you want to go on that big trip you've been planning for 3 years. Do you think we ought to go? I'm asking a 5-year-old.
Right.
What's she going to say? A trip? We're going to go on a trip? Yeah, let's go. Of course. But if I'm in my adult self, I turn to her and go, sweetie, I know we planned this trip for years. And I know that was the thing you wanted to be doing right now, but we can't go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out a way that we can stay home.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things we can do right at home. Let's stay home and we will read. We'll watch our favorite TV shows. We'll look at this great thing. Zoom our friends, our relatives, right? And she goes, oh, I'm disappointed. I know. It is disappointing.
Right.
But this is okay. You're going to be all right. And so will I. And wow, people can get by that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I would say today, I have friends here who are all younger than me. God, it feels like everybody is. But who are younger than me, that when they say, hey, do you need anything from the store? Because I'm in a high-risk group.
Right.
And I say, sure. And they say, okay, we'll go get it. Would I like to be going? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go? Probably not a good idea. No, sweetie, we can't go to the store.
No, I know you want to go. The answer is no. Right.
And like you said, with your 13-year-old, no, I raised a child who's now going to be a father himself. And I remember when he, like what you said with your son, he's like, my son has boundaries.
Yeah. Oh,
and, it's because I did.
Right.
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 And it's like, he got so mad at me one day when he was a teenager. He hated me. He wished that he wished I'd go away. He wished he had a different mom. I can't believe how much I hate you, blah, blah, blah. And immediately I triggered. And that's that feeling of,
Yeah.
My face started turning red. And I knew right away, I thought, do not open your mouth right now.
Right.
Because now we're both going to be 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And we're going to be yelling at each other. And he is 15. He can't do anything other than act his age. Exactly. But it'd be good for me to act my age. So I took a minute and grew myself up, and I listened to everything he said.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, honey, it's a bitch being your age. I remember. I hated it. My parents were jerks.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be a jerk right now. You cannot go do that thing. But there are options. So I'm sorry that you have to go through this. I really, really am.
Yeah.
But why don't you go to your room and calm down and then try and come up with alternatives? Now, you can imagine the shock because, he was calling me names and he hates me and everything. And I know how parents are. What do you mean you hate me? You can't call me those names. Now you're acting their age.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But when you say, oh, yeah, because now you're in your adult. When you're in your adult, you can look at them and see that it's their experience and it has nothing to do with you.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
And that would be fine. I mean, the people that are out, with the guns and they're, threatening others and they want to open up the economy.
Crazy.
If our leaders all acted like adults, I could say, yeah, I know it's really hard on you right now, and I don't want to step on your rights. And this doesn't really have much to do with rights. It has to do with we're a community, and we have to make decisions based on what's best for everyone.
Yes. Yes.
Right? What can we do to help you?
Yeah, it's so simple.
That would certainly take the air out of that, wouldn't it?
Yes, yes, it would. And I know we're a little over time here, but I wanted to share this, and I I was thinking as I was seeing so much on social media, about is it a hoax, is it this, is it that, and I thought I don't remember what it's like to not be responsible for like a really large group of people. And I know part of what's happening is people are just in process. The problem is when they're voicing all that on social media, it's swaying people one way or another who are kind of rudderless in their life. They don't know what an adult is. They don't know,
They
and
think they're acting like their age.
exactly. So even with my congregation and in my work with people one-on-one, you know, some of the conversation is, look, if you want to look into all those things, know the facts for yourself, but try not to just, kind of blurt it out on social media, because people not as aware, people not as able
Educated.
and educated to make a decision, you're going to put them in harm's way, by these kind of cavalier ideas. And so I'm so glad for you saying all of this about our adult, because we all have one that we can find. And
Yes.
I want to really encourage your book one more time, which is called Iron Legacy. It is available on your website as well. We'll have that.
And Amazon.
And
You can get it
Amazon.
on Amazon.
Yep. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes, and also your website, which you mentioned. So, Donna, as always, it's always a pleasure and a blessing to speak with you. I think you do an amazing work and have for many, many years, in helping people wake up to the goodness that they are, and also grow up into the grown-up that they are, through the work of self-reflection, of, healing codependence, and in fact, the work of recovery as well. So we thank you for being with us. And friends, as always, we bless you on the journey. Know that we are always lifting you in prayer for God's highest and best in your life. We support you. And if there's some way that we can support you more, especially during this time, let us know. Send us an email. If there's a topic, if there's a guest, that we can lift you up, that we can help you on the journey, this is our goal. We are here to reawaken consciousness to love, acceptance, and peace. And we thank you for your part of this. So thank you for subscribing on YouTube, for sharing on social media. We bless you on the journey, dear friend.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by Natural Awakenings Magazine and Zen Living Realty. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, Nora Miles, Diana Cox, Leslie Williams, Susanna Garcia, Shayla Mount, Dorothy Moore, Aggie Payton, Taryn Tucker, and Anna Evans. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2020 Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.